Many players have expressed difficulty with planning around large maps and Orcs Must Die Deathtrap, so I've made a guide on my preferred barricade setups for every map in the game at launch to help you out. Each setup has at least 2 or 3 different options to account for rift corruption, which might block your preferred method, or the scramble distortion, which might require setting up differently for random traps. I've put timestamps for each map in the video if you're looking for a specific setup, and will be uploading full playthroughs on these maps in the future, so check the top right corner for a link to these videos when they go live. Feel free to give me feedback on the setups in the comments below, and let me know if this video helps you out. Without further ado, let's dive straight into this guide. Patio Gardens is the first map you play on, and if you're new to the series, it might be a bit intimidating having to set up defenses for 2 gates right in front of your rift, with another 2 gates coming out later on in the mission. So, for those who are new to the series, I'm going to spend this segment just explaining a little bit more on why I'm doing what I'm doing. Future segments, I'll just be showing you the barricade setups. If you are starting out, it might be tempting to put traps down here on either side. What you want to do is try and push enemies into one lane completely. So we could just block this staircase off entirely, and all these enemies from these gates are going to have to come around and up here. If we do that, we are also going to want to block this section off, because it can still come all the way around and up. So now they're only coming up one staircase here. Now, when I first tackled this map, I did something like this and started mazing them round here. I had floor traps down here and some wall traps there, and just an abundance of floor traps as I go around this maze I make. Don't do that, very inefficient. A lot of your damage is coming from walls and ceilings instead of floor traps, and on top of that, you're going to be missing out on some very much needed combos. Combos will give you more coins to spin more traps. They'll also give you more skulls to spend on your skill trees. So instead, what we could do is, if you still want to use a method like this, you can take the barricades down like this. So now enemies will have to run all the way around here and then all the way up the stairs. Now my frame rate is going to tank here. I don't know why. It's only Patio Gardens that this happens, so I do apologize for the quality of the video right now. If I stand back, it'll be fine. But then we can place barricades along this section here, and that pushes all the enemies all the way around here, and then up through this nice kill box. As you see, we have ceilings, we have walls, we have floors as well. This is a much better area to fight them on, rather than just out here in the open, or even up here in the open, where you'll only have access to floors and, you know, tiny segments of walls. Here you have everything. And then if you have more barricades, what you could even do is 1, 2, say these are barricades 3, 4. That pushes them all through here, where you can have more ceiling traps, where you can even write them around like this if you want. Again, if you have additional barricades to do so, that puts them around this entire segment of ceiling as well. So that is an option. It's not the option I go for. I'm going to show you one that I think is a bit better for utilizing. But this is probably the easiest one to start out with and get the grips with the game. What we can do instead is come up here, place 3 barricades along this staircase, and then over here, sell these 4. Now what I'm going to do is place barricades diagonally here. If you're not too familiar with barricade placement, doing this to block off 2 separate paths, very inefficient. Instead, you can just place them diagonally to save on a couple barricades like this. So we've went from 6 down to 4, and we're still blocking off 2 paths with less barricades. So by doing this, we block off these 2 sections. That means enemies are going to have to come all the way around here, all the way up here, and down here. Here, we have a kill box. You can even place a couple barricades here if you want.
This is the perfect place for
That'll push the enemies in against the walls and under the ceilings. You can even take this one out if you want. Just have this one pushing them underneath all the ceilings, so don't just run diagonally through it. Having 2, I quite like doing for the shorter range walls, like the wall chargers or grinders. And then you also just have a huge section of ceilings for your shock zappers or for your acid showers. And you also have these high walls up here too for, say, bomb dispensers, which you can place them up high. The bombs come down, they'll blow up in enemies' faces. You can even place them down here to roll down the stairs to bounce over and kill any enemies coming up. There's a lot of potential. And then what you can even do is Barricade here and here to again push them into the walls to try and maximize that damage. You can even have minecarts here to just throw them down the staircase and that'll launch any smaller Orcs. If you are doing this route, 2 barricades here, that stops these enemies coming up, that stops enemies running down and up as well, so that lets you set your traps up just at this corner here. Other possibilities is doing this. That means these enemies have to come all the way around here with everyone else. You can have traps here, right outside the gate if you want, that'll catch everyone coming up too. You could even block this section off completely, and depending on how much barricades you have, you can block this lane off completely as well by going like this and then doing the same on this side, so you have double wide barricades or just extra barricades through threads. And when you do that, you can place wall blade launchers, and the wall blade launchers will come all the way up. They'll bounce off the barricades too, so they'll just come up this entire section, kill every enemy, because that's 3 gates worth of enemies coming down this one area. I still think you're better maximizing the traps up here and up there just to catch this gate too. However, that's the corridor path that you can absolutely take. It's the one I use all the time, even on difficulty 10. It works a treat for me. You do have this area here with lots of ceilings, lots of walls, lots of floors. You could, if you wanted, utilize this maybe later on in a run where you have more barricades. If you do something like this, and then you do something like this, and then, you know, you'd have to maybe go diagonally here. And then you'd basically just use these spare barricades up here to block this section off. Again, you might need a couple more. No, that should be it. No, you will be missing a couple. So you'd need like one more, I think, just to block this section off completely. But what that would do is that moves all the enemies all the way around here. They'd have to go up the staircase and down, and then through this area. So all the gates are right under here before going up the stairs to your rift. Again, not as good as the corridor setup, I think. Still maybe not as good as even the first one I showed you, but it's an option. And then just one more possibility, say you do have Rift Corruption or Scramble and you need another option. What you can do is just 2 barricades here, that'll push the enemies in here under these ceilings and against these walls. Again, like I showed you at the start. But what you can then do is 4 barricades here to cut this section off. And then obviously coming through here, so we'd want to put barricades down this length here. So what that means is these enemies at the front will have to come all the way through this area to then come up this staircase. These enemies at the back will have to come through here to go all the way around through this area and then up this staircase, where again you can place minecarts, you can push them against the walls a bit more, you do have more ceilings as well. And then they'd come all the way around here with this mini kill box that you can utilize too. And then to block this section off, you just do the reverse of what we do for the corridor section. And that gives you a nice little path here where they'll all have to come out this one room where you do have potential with traps here and then on the stairs. This still isn't as good as the first 2 methods, maybe not even as good as that method over there too. But I do just want to give you as many options as possible if some locations are blocked off or you just want to try something different. Maybe you've been struggling getting into the game, and hopefully these setups will help you understand why being as efficient as you can with barricades is important, and why trying to push them all into one single lane is incredibly important, not just for this map, but in general. So that'll hopefully let you start getting the hang of Orcs Must Die and why you need to try and be efficient with your paths and your traps. Castle Courtyards can be a really fun map. I really like this map myself, and there's 2 ways I'm going to show you how you can set up on this map. First, what we're going to do is come down here, place our barricades on this corner of the staircase here, and then go diagonally until about here, and then just straight along. And what this does is it pushes all the enemies come all the way down here and through this gate. Now, obviously, some are coming down here, so what we want to do is block this off with barricades here, and this off with barricades here. So now, they're coming all the way down here, all the way through here, and all the way up this gate, where other enemies are spawning too. You can have minecarts, you can have your Morning Star launchers, you can have bomb dispensers, you can have a lot going on here. You could even have minecarts going down this staircase if you want. I'd be careful with that, because you could throw the smaller orcs over the barricades and they'll just run straight to the rift. Once done that, 1, 2, 3, this staircase is now blocked off, so any enemies coming up here need to go all the way along here. We have sentinels here too, which means they're going to act as punching bags and they're going to deal some chip damage to enemies, so that'll slow them down and maybe even kill a couple too. Then we have a gate here. You have a couple options with what you could do here. You could block this off completely if you want, so they have to come all the way around with the rest of the enemies, or you could leave this open, which is what I do. Put a barricade here. They come through here. Again, you can have your wall blades, you can have your wall chargers. And then same with here, you can do this. They come through here and they're pushed against this one wall, since there's no wall here, to get a bit more damage going off there too. You can have your tar and acid geysers and whatnot. You can have your shock zappers. You can have whatever you like. They'll come all the way down here. Again, if you want, you can have minecarts. You can have bomb dispensers rolling down. And then they'll come all the way down and through here. Now, what we can also do, sell these barricades. And you could push them against this wall a little more. Make them go this way a bit more. Or you can save them for this little area here. Now we have a small section of wall, our ceiling. This is going to be good for, say, a swinging mace, or maybe some molten gold. Maybe you want more shock zappers. So what we can do to utilize this a bit more is, if I swap this around, do this, and then do this. So they're going to have to come here, they're going to have to come here, and then all the way around, just utilizing every inch of the ceiling before coming out here. Now, before they head straight to the rift, if you have more barricades, so you have double wides, you can then build a path going all the way along this wall. So they're hugging here, they're being hit by grinders or wall chargers, before then coming out into the rift. So this is the method I go for almost all the time, and I really like it. I think it's very fun. And say you did have double wide barricades, if you wanted, you could place them like this to block the section off completely, and that means they need to come this way. And then you could place another one like this, and then they're going to need to come along here. You could have push traps. You can have, flip traps, and just push them into the soup pot where they'll immediately die. There's also a secret attached to doing so. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because it's very fun. It's very good. Try it out yourself. It's definitely worth doing so. But that's how you do the setup here. Now, one thing I will note before moving on to the next one, you are going to want to place steam vents against flyers. Just deal with them a bit easier.
Perfect.
Don't do this. So the steam vents will push through the ceilings. So any orcs that run across here will be thrown up and come down here and just run straight to the rift. So don't do that. Here is okay. If you want to do it here, you can. Put your steam vents on each side of the barricades here. Doesn't matter if it gets any enemies up there. I don't believe they're going to launch far enough to come down here for them at that side. So that's another option you have for dealing with flyers. Just make sure you don't do it on this very thin bridge underneath it, because you will have enemies thrown down, and that'll lead to some rift points being lost that you don't want lost. Now, for the second setup, we're still in these barricades, and instead we're going to place 2 up here, because this is the more efficient way to block this section off. And it's just the reverse. So they come out here, they come all the way around, they come down here and up here, and they go all the way around here. So they now have 2 sections to come out of, as they're all going round and down. We block this off with 2.
This'll stop them.
We can come all the way down here. And this allows us to maybe say block this off with 2. And then utilize this hedge garden area. You could block this section off if you want, so they all come all the way down here. You could block this section off, or you can maybe try and maze them through a little more all the way around. This gives you a lot of potential uses for wall traps. This gives you a lot of potential uses for floor traps. You do have a length of ceiling here, so it's probably better doing something like this and then doing something like this.
Guess I'll have to put this someplace else.
So all the enemies have to come all the way around here. You have a lot of ceilings here that will attack every enemy coming down this lane. And then you have a full kill box here as well. So you could do something similar to what I showed you before. If you have enough barricades, another one here, another one here. So they have to come all the way to the end, through here, all the way around here, through here. This is a nice setup. This is one I do enjoy using. If you have wall blade launchers, they'll go the full length around this garden. And then, you know, they'll be a bit sporadic around here, but that's fine because some enemies are coming around here, some enemies are coming around here. You might even find some enemies go all the way around here and then down here. So wall blade launchers can be really fun. Bounce traps in general can be really fun around here and down this corridor and in here. If they get out here, say you have double wide, you could place, or say you don't want these barricades in this skill box, you could place some here, for example,
This is the perfect
to push
place
them
for a
under this
barricade.
tiny length of ceiling a bit more. And that's going to buy you a bit more damage, it's going to buy you a bit more combo points, and more importantly, a bit more time to kill them off before they head to your rift. Now again, flyers are the only issue, so you'll still need to hang back here a bit to deal with them. However, that's two ways to funnel them on complete opposite sides of the map. This one here has a lot more potential, I think, and can be a lot more fun. But it's completely up to you
Barricading them
on
here.
what you
Won't
want to
get
do
past this.
and how you want to approach this map. If you do set up this way, and again, you do have more barricades, you can do something similar to before and write them all down into the soup pot area to fling them into the soup pot and kill the smaller guys, or even the bigger guys if you have the chance to do so instantly. So you have your options. I really like this map. I think this can be a ton of fun to play on, and there are two setups for you to use when you approach it yourself. Island Observatory is a map that feels like there's only a couple
Maybe I
right
should
ways
have
to
done
do
a
this,
village planner.
purely because these two gates at the front are completely separated. There is this length of water going down this beach, and that means these guys can only come up this staircase, and these guys can only come up this staircase. Now, you can place traps and minecarts and whatnot going down the length of these areas if you want. That's going to be inefficient because we've got two gates back here as well.
Barricading them
So
here.
I'm going to
We
show
won't
you
get
a
past
couple
this.
different methods. I'm going to show you the first one I did when I approached this map, and I'm going to show you another one, which is the one I use all the time, which I enjoy quite a bit. So if we put the barricades like this, what this does is these two previously separated gates are now going to merge completely. I'm going to move these barricades here just a little
They'll
bit,
go right where I want
like
them to.
this. So now they can't come up this staircase. Instead, they come all the way up here, all the way around. I've blocked this section off, so they have to come up this staircase and around. Just slows them down a bit, and also lets me use
this is
my
my
favorite
kind
bomb
of
dispensers
decor.
if I want. Since these bombs will come down, they'll roll down the staircase. They'll be a bit annoying and deal just a little bit more damage as they come through. And then what I'll do
This
is
is
I'll
the
come out
perfect
here.
place for a
I'll place
barricade.
barricades here. I'll place barricades here. And then, depending how much you have, you can repeat this process. Just maze it out. Just be sure to leave a section for this gate to come out. Say you want to block this off here completely. Leave this one section here where they come out and then go straight into the maze. And then that gives you this long section here before they make it to your rift. So you have this as an option. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot less ceiling traps. You have ceiling traps here, so you can try and push this out a bit more to utilize this area if you want. You do have ceiling traps here, and on the other side with the other gate if you want. You have this archway you can utilize as well. There's a chest here. So this is a setup. This is absolutely a setup, and it has done me a lot of justice in the past. You could even set your barricades up down here if you want. You could even set them up down here, depending on how much you have. You could even block this
We'll have
section
to
off,
take the long
and then
way.
block this section off as well. So if you do this, they come all the way around here, and they'll have to come through the library. And if you have spare barricades again, you can push them underneath these ceilings, and they'll have to come all the way around here. And now you've incredibly extended the length of the path that the Orcs will have to take to come all the way around. And this also does open up nice little kill boxes for you as well. Again, there's a lot of ceiling space for traps. There's a lot of wall space around this corner, and then you also have half walls here, so you can use your wall blade launchers to have blades go all the way around the library if you want, or you can try and push them against it for your wall blades here if you want. So this is one setup. This isn't the one I normally do, but it is the one that I went with when I first started playing on this map. Instead, what we can do as a second setup is keep these barricades here, but instead of doing this, all we're doing is placing barricades diagonally like this, and then placing just 2 here. So we've just done the reverse. So instead, all those gates are going to come all the way around here and go up this staircase. Of course, what you are going to want to do is just come over here and block this section off with 4, and that stops them coming down here. So instead, they're going to come through here. You've got ceiling traps, you've got wall traps, you've got floor space. They come up here. You have this really nice section of corridor. You can even use your spare barricades to like block this section off if you want to push them in against the walls a bit more. This is really nice for utilizing these fence traps in my opinion. Bomb dispensers all the way up here, and even some up there if you want. The only issue with this setup is there's not a lot of ceiling space, but because of how small this area is, this works out tremendously in my experience, especially if you're playing a say Ren and you have the ability to reset your traps. You can have the acid geysers, you can have tar traps, slow them down as well. You can have shock zappers here. You can even have your wall blades or grinders or whatnot on the edges. But if we do this and then we do this, that's a lot of balls going down here, and even up this staircase if they get through, and then all the way down here and hitting everyone down here too. So I love using this setup. Like I said, you can even push them against the wall for your wall chargers, for your grinders. So you don't need to use bench traps for this to work. It works in many different ways of setting it up actually. When they do make it through here, they come up here, you now have some more ceiling traps. So you could even do something like this to push them into the walls a bit more if you want. With your spare barricades, you can have ice lances up here if they start making their way through and you want to slow them down. You can have your tar going down here. You can have, again, your wall chargers and whatnot. And then as they come down this staircase, again, you have a similar setup where you're going to have a little kill box here. Again, if you had the Morningstar launchers on this staircase, they can end up going down here, which isn't too good because it's not going to be as efficient. But see, you have double wide, see, you have extra barricades. What you could also do is set your barricades up to push them along here, then a wide line, and then they go to your rift. And that buys you even more time to deal with them. And this is entirely possible just with double wide without any additional barricades, to have them come down and then along here for you to deal with them a little more before they head to the rift. I really like this setup. The library, now that I'm thinking about it, might be really effective since you can do this with all 22 barricades, especially on like difficulty 10 where you do want to utilize the ceiling traps a bit more. But this one's my favorite. You could even do something like this if you want to push them through the library this way, and then they'll all come down here. You will need to make sure you block this staircase off to do this. But if you were wanting to go the library method, you're better pushing them all the way around here and then up into the library like I showed you the first time around. 10 Plaza is another map with quite a few different ways to set this up. I'm going to show you 2 ways that I use. One that is my favorite, another that is rather effective, and then I'll just outline another couple options at the end. Block these sections off with 6 barricades in total. Come over here, block this section off with, I believe it's 4. Then you want to come here, block this off with 4. Come up here and just block this section off with 4. So what happens now? All the enemies are going to have to come up this one lane. This is a massive room with massive potential. I really enjoy using this room. You can have bench traps at the edge here. You can have shock zappers scattered through here. You can have bramble going all the way around this room if you really want. What I like to do with my remainder barricades, 1, 2, 3, then over here, I'll maybe do something like this here. And then what that does is push them all down here and then up. If you have spare barricades, You can have more here to push them against the wall. Before coming up here, you can have bomb dispensers up here. You can have bench traps down here. You can have wall charges, etc. You can have ice lances down here. This is a really, really fun setup. This is my favorite way to play in this map because there's so much potential in this one room alone. And then here, this is where things can get like a little hectic. If you're playing this van, come down here, you can buff all the traps. If you're playing this Ren, you can reset traps constantly. You have a decent amount of ceiling space here and here. Obviously can't place any here, but you can here. So if the barricades were extended out this way, you can even have a line of ceiling traps down here a little. It's great. It's fun. I really enjoy this setup. I've really said all I can about it. You do have 2 kill boxes further up that you can maybe utilize a little bit. But now we're going to move on to the next setup because, again, it's a very simple and easy one. It kind of explains itself for you. There's an abundance of ways you can utilize this area. What I'm going to do here is 1, 2, 3 to push all the enemies up this way now. They're going to come all the way around here. And then I'm actually going to sell these barricades here. And I'm then going to go, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that stops these enemies coming down here and down this staircase, but also around this length, around the back. Now, what we do with this setup is if we come down here, we can start mazing them. Depending how many barricades you have. You can do something like this.
I'm out of
You could keep this completely open if you want and put barricades up here to push them against the wall, since you have some ceiling trap spaces here as well. Push them all the way down here.
This is now a dead end.
Like this. So this is another option you have to utilize this small length is, you know, maybe not your main kill area, but like an emergency backup area, with your main kill box being this massive area here. We have ceilings, walls, and floors. So again, they'll all come down this one section. They'll all come up here and around before going down to this area here. Again, that's all I need to say about it. I think it explains itself well enough. It's a really good kill box to utilize. I just prefer this one. I think this one's a lot more fun and it has a lot more potential. What I didn't show you was down here, you could even set up the barricades in a way like this. For example, if you have spare, so you'd have to come all the way around here and then all the way up there. So you have them winding down this big room as well. Other areas you can set up, you've got these areas here, so you can push all enemies either all the way around here or both through here and here, and they come down this area. You've got ceiling traps, you've got wall spaces and floor traps. You can do that on the flip side over here as well. Down this section, you also have 10 little kill boxes down these staircases too, so it's another reason why I'd maybe want to block this section off and have them come down here, because you have this really nice kill box area. They can also utilize very efficiently in this first setup too. So Town Plaza, a lot of options, and hopefully one of these will help you out tremendously well. Mansion Hedge Maze is another favorite of mine, and I'd say is arguably one of the easier maps, probably up there, or at least tied with Patio Gardens for easiest. One, with how many different ways you can build on this map, and two, just because the kill boxes are really, really nice to set up. So I'm going to show you a couple methods and then suggest another couple that you could do. But what I first did when I approached this map was I set my barricades up here. And then what you can then do is 1, 2, 3, block this area off. So any enemies coming up here will have to come all the way around here and all the way up here. Except what we're going to do is we're also going to do 1, 2, 3. So we've blocked the rift off like this, and that leaves one staircase they need to come up. And the only way they can access this is coming down this full length. You can have flip traps here for this hazard as well, which is always nice. But they're going to come all the way through the kitchen area like so. You have a lot of ceilings, you have a decent amount of walls, you have a lot of stairs as well if you want to use, say, minecarts, or even just flip traps to push them back down if you want to set some traps up down here. You can have some crowd control going on there too. And then what I do up here is I come here, I put a barricade here in the middle, a barricade here, and then a barricade here. And what that does is that pushes all the enemies against the wall and then all the way around. You can have your wall blades, you can have, I believe you can have bomb dispensers further up if you really want. You can have your shock zappers all the way down here and along in a little L shape. You can have acid showers and magic lasers alternating all the way down here too. You can have, I don't know, grinders. I think I said wall blades already. You can try Morning Star launchers, but I don't think this is going to give you a huge amount of use for them here. Maybe on this staircase and maybe down this staircase because they're very small corridors, so you could do that. And then you can have your acid geysers or brimstone alternating with the tar all the way around. You could even have the deep freeze vent, the ice vent. Here you can have your ice lance all the way up here too. So there's a decent amount you can utilize this long section with before take them up to this kill box here. This works for me all the time. I really love this setup. It is my favorite. If you have enough barricades or want to use rift barricades, you can set the barricades up like this. So they'd have to come all the way down and around and then all the way around here. So again, if you have your wall charges and whatnot on the walls that they need to hug to activate, you can have those there as well. And then, like I said, you have hazards here. You have a really decent amount of length before they manage to get to your F2. So if any do leak through, this is a very forgiving setup, buying you the chance to deal with those larger enemies or smaller enemies before they get to your rift. Now, for the second setup, we're going to sell these barricades, and we're basically going to do the opposite of what we did, where instead we're making them come down the other staircase, like this. So as they come down, they'll have two options to come down through. We're going to block this off here, and then that means they can only come down here. What we can then do is if we, instead of blocking off this section with 3 barricades, we can come down here, block this off with 2 to save a whole barricade. They need to go all the way around and then all the way down this very long bridge. You could even have barricades, say, here to push them against this wall, if you wish. You can have flip traps try and push them into this hazard also. You can sell this if you want to focus all your traps down this bridge, or if you don't want anyone come down here, you can close this off completely and move some traps up here. You can say block this section off here, or even do the reverse to try and push them down this length wall. You could have minecarts come down here, since all but one gate are going to be coming up this section. It makes sense to set up a decent amount of traps here as well. And then some enemies are going to come through this gate, of course, so you can have a lot of different traps up here. This setup is really fun for the magic orb trap, where if we put this here, we can just send these orbs down the whole length of the corridor. They'll bounce, they'll bounce, they'll bounce. If you have the thread to make them bounce longer, that's fine, although I think they disappear earlier due to their projectile lifetime. However, you can also have them down here if you want, because these little banisters act as half walls, and that will allow them to bounce more. So if you like this trap, you get a lot of use out of it. And you can have Bramble set up to go all the way down here if you want. There's a lot you can do. So this is my second recommendation for setting up your barricades here. But I'll show you a couple others you could possibly do, just not into as much detail. So if we sell these, we can instead sell these barricades and block this off with 4.
They'll go where we want.
And then we can block this off with 4. And then you could even block this off like this, and that leaves you with 9 barricades. And they're all going to come all the way down here with 9 barricades. That buys you a lot of options to mace them around this area. You've got a lot of ceilings, you've got a lot of walls. I wonder if this is enough to maybe do something like this. So instead, they're going to have to come through here. This is a really nice kill box. You can have a ton of fence traps here as well if you want. You can have haymakers here as well. So this is a really, really nice area to set up. And again, if you have your haymakers coming down here too, that's a lot of damage, especially with 4 times more damage thread. And then they'll come out here to a little area where you can have bramble, you can have ice lances, you can have your freeze vents and whatnot, just to stop them from coming through even further. But this is a really, really good option. I've not tried it yet, but it's a very similar setup to what I do in back alleys, so it'll work. And it's a really fun one to do as well. If you have a ton of barricades, say you have double wide barricades, pretend this is a barricade here, what you can even do is block the staircase and this gate off here. If you keep those barricades there, and you can try and push them all the way around out into the garden, push them all the way down here. So you had another 2 barricades, which you should have with double wide. They'd come all the way down here. And this lets you actually utilize the hedge maze a little more. This is very unoptimized, in my opinion, compared to the other setups I showed you. But it's an option. If you have lots of barricades and you just want to have fun on, say, lower difficulties, you can do something like this, where they come all the way around here, all the way down here, and if you have plenty of barricades, you can maybe make them go all the way up and around, depending how you block the staircases off. But that is 4 different methods, depending on how many barricades you have. Again, the first 3 you can do with your base 22. So, a lot of stuff that you can do on this map. It is one of my favorites for that reason, and hopefully, if you have been struggling with it, that gives you a bunch of different options to choose from. Tridocks is a teleporting rift map, so that means there are 3 potential rift locations, and as a result, this segment is going to be one of the longer ones, as is the segment on back alleys, just to go over the different methods for each rift. Now, the warehouse, I feel, only has 1 major setup, and what we do with the warehouse is we block off the big open archway here with, I believe that was 8 barricades. So once you do so, they'll have to come around here and through here. We block this section off with 4, push them all the way through here, and then we can block this section off like this, if we wish to do so, to make them go here. You could even tighten this corner up by pushing barricades out a little more. You could even push the barricades out a tiny more here if you want to utilize these walls a bit better as well. Either way, what you're doing is you're pushing all 4 gates down into this one section where you'll have floor traps. It might help to have this 2 spaces wide. They'll come up here. You can have, maybe not swinging maces because you don't want to push anything over the barricades, but you can have shock zappers. You can have the acid showers. You could have, wall blades or whatnot, wall chargers here, depending on how wide you make this section. For example, maybe we do want to have this out here, like this. Just have more ceiling space utilized. You could have mine carts push down this wall. You could have bench traps in this room, since all the bench traps will tend to come down here and then down the staircase too. So if we did have, say, Morningstar launchers here,
this is my kind
and then we did this, they'll bounce all the way down, and then they'll either stay up here or fall down here. Sometimes they'll go over the barricades. Most of the time they'll bounce around them and go out here too. So this is absolutely an option you have. And then you have more ceilings. You have little archways for wall blade launchers. You have long corridors for magic orbs. You have a lot of options. Like I say, here's another possible magic orb option here as well, to go all the way down. You can have hook shots at the very edge of this platform here, but make sure it's at the very edge. If you are going to have physics traps here to utilize this large hazard, be careful, because if they drop down here, they're going to be able to just run straight into your rift. So do take care if you're wanting to use physics traps. If they make their way all along this length of bridge, they're coming down here, and you're just going to, again, set up a very similar kill box to back there to have an emergency kill box at the end if enemies make their way through. And then that's it. This is the only setup I think I can recommend for the warehouse. I'm not really too sure how else to set this up, other than maybe instead of here, you still have this section closed off, and then you can maybe do something, say you have corruption in the way here. You can maybe do something like block this section off here, and then have them come down here, and then around here, something like that. It's not the most fun rift. I mean, using this bridge is a lot of fun, but rift corruption on the warehouse is very, very nasty. It's one of my least favorite rift corruptions. If it's in the way here, you could even try and barricade this off here, and then spin more barricades to barricade this off here. You could even try and block that off there and have them all come down this way if you want. I wouldn't recommend it because you're better using that bridge or even just this area here, but you have a couple options. Next, we're going to head to the rift in the bottom right corner of the map, because this one does have a couple options for setting up. When I first started in this map, I would block this section off entirely.
Barricade in position.
I would then block this section off entirely. I'd block these back stairs. I'd then block these two sections as well, like this. So with these blocked, that means they can only come from this one area here. And then you have lots of ceilings, you have lots of walls, lots of floors. They all come down here. You can just stand at the back here, shoot away and whatnot. You can do the same here. This one's a bit better actually, because as you'll see, you have a lot more ceiling space, because this part here is a bit blocked off. So you might be able to use, maybe you can use auto ballistas there, for example. If I can find them and put them down here, like so. You can put auto ballistas, but you can't have long ceilings go across here because they get cut off in this beam. This isn't the case here, so you have your options. This is a better one to utilize. However, there's also just a better kill box, in my opinion, just a little further up. If we put Barricade here and put it up this way diagonally, like this, that blocks off all these 4 sections, and we go up here, we remove these barricades, and we do this, or even we do this. And that pushes all these enemies right out by this gate, and they come in here. I really like this setup because you can use any spare barricades like this to push them all the way around against these walls. You've got a lot of ceiling here. They come out here. You've got a lot more ceiling here as well. You can use 2 more barricades to block this section off. So I believe it's a longer corridor they need to travel down. You could even have a magic orb here to bounce all the way down here and back. Maybe a couple. It's up to you how you want to set this up, but I think this is the better way to set up for this rift. It's never really done me any harm. I actually really like using this method. And those are 2 of the main setups. Now, you can get rift corruption hurt you very, very easily on this map. It blocks a lot. You need to spend a lot more barricades than necessary to block off this section, for example. You need to go just out of it a little bit and then round like this. Something similar to that. You can block this off, however, with rift corruption. So if you do have rift corruption effect in here and here, usually your only method is to either utilize this tiny kill box, which isn't great because you don't have the full ceiling length here, and it's a very tiny kill box outside a gate. But what we can also do is set up your barricades to block all these sections off here, come up here, and send them up this section. Is it as good as the sections below? No, but it's arguably better than using this tiny box right outside a gate. So they're going to come up this one staircase. You could have minecarts, push them down. You can have bomb dispensers, you can have fence traps if you want. They're going to come all the way over here. You have more wall space. You have a lot of ceiling space here too, and a lot of ceiling space here. And they should just hug this wall if they come down here rather than go around. Some might. But you will be able to set up a lot of wall traps here, and then they'll come all the way down here and down this staircase. So a lot of options for this one rift, everything will be like right next to it. And like I said, the rift corruption can be a huge pain, not just on either of these rifts, but this map in general. So do be aware of that, but hopefully, you know, I've given you 4 potential setups that will help mitigate any corruption you might face. Now for the last rift, which is where the rift is actually located for me here, I'm going to show you 2 setups, maybe 3. One that is very fun, one that is very efficient, and I'll see about a third. I'm not too sure if that'll work, but hang on with me for a second. We're going to block this off with 4. We're then going to come up here, block this off with 5. So we're starting off with a more efficient kill box. If we block this off with 5, we don't need to block each ramp with 4. That's both these sections completely blocked off. So now all the enemies are going to have to run all the way around and down. If we come up here, what we can do is we can utilize this kill box. You don't need to place barricades too much, but I like doing so.
Barricade in place. This will stop them.
1, 2, 3, 4. These enemies come out here. And then 1, 2. They're all going to come out here and around. You could then do something like this with 5. So enemies come down here, meet up here, and then go through here together. And then with any spare barricades, you can move this along. You can say, write them around here. So they come around here. And then, you know, you could have something along lines of this to push them out just a little more. Try and have them hug around this wall as well. So maybe don't have that there. Just to fully utilize this tiny section of wall you'll have. But you are going to have a lot of ceiling traps, which is really, really good, because I believe they're the more powerful traps. And a lot of floor space as well. So you can have a bramble, you can have gas emitters, you can go wild with whatever your heart desires. If they do come out here, you have these ramps, you can have bomb dispensers, you can, you know, have wall traps set up, more bramble if you want. You have your options. Now, as for the least efficient setup, but one I really enjoy using, maybe don't recommend it on higher difficulties or later on in the wave, but it's one I love. We don't really care about this section here. Well, we do about this ramp specifically, but we don't care if they come down here. So you can leave this blocked if you want, but I tend to leave this second ramp here open so they can come down either section. What I'll then do is come down here, and I'll go 1, 2, 3. I'll do the same over here. I'll go 1, 2, 3. And then I'll do the same over here. I'll go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Barricading them here. They won't get past.
So what I've done is I've created a little maze. I can have bramble at the bottom of each side if I want for the bramble to really come out. They go through here, they go through here. What you could then do if you want is put a barricade here to try and push them into the wall a bit more, for example. So you have that option as well. Just try and get more efficiency out of utilizing these walls. And then the reason I really love this is because my favorite trap is a bomb dispenser. And this setup is incredibly fun. Just incredibly fun. Because especially if you're playing this Ren, you can just spam bomb dispensers here. Any enemy coming down here will be just covered in bombs. They'll roll all the way down. You'll have them up here as well. And then these bombs can roll down into this barricade section as well. You can even have more bomb dispensers along here if you want. Now, this setup doesn't really offer you a lot in the way of combos, is a huge issue with it, which is why I wouldn't recommend it on higher difficulties or late in the waves. But earlier in your run, it's very fun. I have a ton of fun with it. You could even have more bounce traps if you want. So if you want to go the Morning Star Launcher route, you absolutely can. And then any enemy coming down, we'll just launch them.
Not here. I think it's time for another go.
And again, they'll come down and hit every enemy. So again, can be trickier to use later on, but definitely fun to use at the start. Now, lastly, another setup you can try and use is similar to over here. you can try and maze the enemies depending how many barricades you have through here and through here, make them come down this corridor and then all the way down and around here. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to block this ramp here. You're going to want to block this ramp here as well. So if I do this and I do this,
Barricade in place. This'll stop them.
like so, they're all going to have to come all the way around here and then through here. So how would we block this off? We'd want to do something like this and have them come all the way around here. Then we'd want to do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Need to earn
If we
some more
had,
coin first.
you know, enough for rift barricades, we can do that. This is really one you'd want to do with a double wide, for example. Have more barricades up here and more barricades diagonally down here to cut off the staircase as well. And then that pushes all the enemies down here and then down here. So this is a third option, which does give you an incredibly efficient kill box to utilize, and then just a corridor and then come around and down into rift that way. But you're going to want double wides unless you can make this a little more efficient than I have. In fact, we can try and tighten this up a little, and I'll also try and sell a couple traps here as well. So coming from this ramp, for example, we can go 1,
I'll
2,
go
3,
right where I want
4,
to.
5, and that uses a couple barricades less than before. Then we can go 1, 2, and then say if we had more barricades like this, and then again we'd do the same here. We'll go diagonal to cut this section off. So it's entirely possible. Maybe not on your first day, unless again you are able to, you know, block this off a bit more efficiently. In fact, if we sell these, because we don't really care if they make it their way down to this ramp, we can come up here and go
This is
1,
now a dead
2,
end.
3. We might need a fourth actually, like this. So, you know, we're just 3 barricades short, but then they're all coming all the way around and all the way down this little kill box section, and that also gives you a decent amount of time before they manage to make their way to the rift too. So there's 3 setups for this one rift. I believe we've covered maybe about 8, 9, maybe even 10, probably 8 setups for this one map in total. You have your options. It's a big map. There's a lot of rifts, so feel free to use whichever one you want, depending on rift corruption, depending on which looks best. Now, Fish Market is a map that a lot of people do not have a fun time on. With
This
the
is the
rain-in
perfect place
or
for a
night
barricade.
variants, it can be even more punishing, especially night, as enemies will spawn here behind your barricades and run straight to your rift. And corruption is extremely frustrating to deal with on this map. However, I'll show you a couple different setup options for you to choose from. For barricades, we block off these 2 staircases, and these 2 gates need to come up this one gate here.
Maybe they'll figure
We
out
can
how
then
to climb over.
go diagonally from the staircase over to this little market stall. Unfortunately, we will need to use a additional barricade just to close off this gap here. Then on the other side of this stall, we can just go straight across, and again we will need to use an additional barricade to close off that gap. So now all the enemies are coming up here. This gate will come out here, and they'll go straight down here. And this is where you're going to be setting up your kill boxes, because you have ceilings here, you have floors, you have walls, more here. You have an area you can put flip traps down if you just want to send them to your rift and have them destroy your crystal. You have that option. So you can do that too. Then back here, depending on the amount of barricades you have, because this is a bit of a tricky gate since it's away from all your kill boxes, you can set something up here and you can have them, you know, wind around the ceiling to try and get the most use out of it. Or what you can do is use any
You'll have
additional
to take
barricades
the
like
long
this
way.
to push them all the way up here. That pushes them into these walls, that makes them go all the way around. that gives you more ceiling traps to deal with them. Additionally, if you had spare barricades, you could even say, well, I don't want them to come down this way, and
No more
instead
barricades.
push them
Gotta
all
stop
the
them
way
if I
around. So
want.
if you did have the barricades out
Maybe
this
I
way
should've
as
done a
well,
village planner.
for these guys, they'd meet down here, and they'd all be hit by this ceiling and this wall too. I don't think this is a good idea unless you have Rift Corruption pushing you to do so. You're better utilizing all of these ceilings and wall spaces. And instead, you could just block this off entirely. So that means this gate will have to go all the way up and round. We can make that a bit more efficient. All the way up and round down to here to meet up with your other kill boxes before coming down here and coming down here. This is the main way I play this map. Again, double wides will help you extend this out here. And this would also stop enemies from coming all the way around and down here as well. So I think this can be an efficient way to deal with all the gates. Maybe not an efficient way to use your barricades, but it is an option. Like I said, you could even just extend the barricades out like
They're not
this
great
if
with
you wanted.
mazes.
Just to push this gate along the path a little more before coming out here, making them a bit easier to deal with and manage. But that is how I'd set up this top area here. However, if we want, we could block this off completely. Run all the way around here. Leave these barricades completely. So we're doing the reverse. These gates come all the way down here. And then we'll just sell these barricades here. Now, we do have a number of options. We can block this gate off here, for example, and that will push them all the way around here. Now, depending on how many barricades you have, you can utilize this area
Barricade
a
in
bit more
position.
effectively.
We'll go where we want.
If you have 3 more barricades, or it looks like 2 more barricades, because I think I left one hanging down there that I should have maybe sold. In fact, is it just at the floor here? Nope, I don't know where it is, but it says it's somewhere in the map. If we come down here, if we have spare barricades, we can just block this section off here too. So normally this gate will run down here. Instead, this is coming all the way down and around here. This gate here is just coming straight through here. But you have walls, you have ceilings. You can use flip traps, you can use hook shots, you can push them into all of these hazards. So this is another method you can use to utilize the underside of the docks here. You can even have them come this way around if you want to come all the way through here. So perhaps you'd block this section off, and then you'd want to block
Let's send
this
them
section
around.
off like this, and then you'd want to block this section off. So this is another option. It's probably the better option actually, because it buys more time. These enemies will have to come all the way down and around, all the way under these docks, all the way under here. Again, you can have push traps and stuff as well. And then all the way around here and up this staircase before going to your rift. That is probably the best option to build on the docks. But you could also just have them come all the way around here and all the way up here. Where the gate spawns. I don't think that's a good option because you've got very little in the way of wall traps and absolutely no ceiling traps for this gate whatsoever. So these two are probably the options you'd want to go for. Either have them come all the way around here and down, and maybe try and get this gate to go all the way up and round and down, or do something like this where you can block this section off. These gates will have to come all the way around here, meet up with this ship, come all the way around the docks here, and all the way down here, meeting up with the final gate before coming through here. Again, so many ceiling trap spaces, so many wall spaces, and it really extends the trip that the guys at the back need to take as well. So hopefully this makes handling Fish Market a bit easier, as it is, in my opinion, one of the harder maps to deal with, especially on night, especially with corruption, and I hope this has helped you out considerably. Corridor Arboretum can look a little scary if it's your first time playing on it solo, as there are 2 separate rifts to defend, but it's actually not that bad because the waves are staggered when you're playing solo. If you're playing with friends, enemies will enter at this gate and that gate up there at the same time. However, if you're playing by yourself, enemies will exit this gate first, and then only after every enemy has exited this gate, they'll then start pouring at this gate here. So you have plenty of time to clean up both lanes before moving on to the next wave without taking any rift point damage. It's a really fun map as well, so try not to worry too much. I'm going to show you 2 ways to set up down here, and then 1 way to set up the other rift. And the first way would be to create the barricades in a diagonal fashion here. That pushes them all through here. You do have a kill box area, so you could, even if you had plenty of barricades, do this to push them all down here. So you have that option. You have a sentinel here, you have a sentinel down here, and then what you're going to want to do is place the barricades like this. So what we're doing is we're making the barricades go diagonally for the rift.
A dead end.
And that means these enemies can't come down here, can't come down here, and more importantly, would block this staircase, because otherwise they'd be able to run up here and go down here if we just made a line cutting them off here. So what this does is this pushes all the enemies down this stretch of corridor. You have ceiling traps. You do only have like half wall spaces here for, say, your blade launchers, but you do have a length of hazard too. So this can be a fun one if we want to start throwing enemies into the water, but it's still not as efficient as it otherwise could be. This is just another possibility if, say, Rift Corruption gets in the way of your first setup. So if we sell these barricades and instead we put them down here, we come back up over here and we sell these barricades here, and instead we just make this a straight lane. All those enemies are going to come through here. Again, they can come through this area. You can set up as a kill box, and then these enemies are going to come out through here. And what you see is a much nicer corridor with a lot more wall space, a lot more ceiling space. You could even place barricades like this to try and push them up against the wall, depending on what traps you want to use. So this is what I go for down here. And what I do is I tend to load up the traps down here as opposed to there, because this wave enters this area last. Obviously, the waves start up there first. So if I can get a head start on killing enemies without me being here, that's even better. So those are 2 ways to set up down here. And then I'm going to show you one up on the second rift. Now, I feel like this is the only main way to do it. This is probably the most efficient way. So this is what I'm going to show you here. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Place for a barricade.
Enemies coming down this gate are going to come all the way around here and down this length of corridor. You could then, if you wanted, block this off. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that means if they make it through here and through your traps, they need to come through here. If you have many barricades, you could go 1, 2, 3, 4. That pushes the enemies down here. You got a little bit of ceiling space you can use. Down here, you got a sentinel here and there to try and distract them and also deal a bit more damage. And then they come all the way up here. But again, you're going to need a couple more barricades. Instead, what you're best doing is coming up here and maybe just utilizing the barricades here. You could either maze them round, or you can make them come down in 2 files, or you can try and just push them up against this one wall space to utilize the full section of wall, because obviously here we only have half walls. Great if you want to use wall blade launchers and whatnot. Otherwise, you're missing out on some essential traps. So we could even sell those barricades here to push them all the way down here. You could have bench traps coming all the way down here. You could even have some dump dispensers up here if you want. And this is basically the setup you can do. You could try a second setup, would come all the way down here and all the way around, but you're missing out on this very essential kill box area, which has an abundance of ceiling space and very limited wall space, but that's fine. If you have more barricades, you could even try and push enemies against the wall here before making them go in and down like this. You have your options, but this is basically all we're really going to be doing up here. Again, I like to focus up here by myself at first with some traps, but spending most traps down there as the mission starts, just so if enemies do get down here before I'm finished up on this lane, the traps are taking care of them. But that is Order Arboretum. A very simple map in comparison to what it first looks like. It does look scary having to defend 2 rifts, but it is easier than it looks. It is a lot easier than most maps in my opinion as well. So hopefully this helps you out when defeating the boss if this is your first rodeo facing that enemy. My first time playing on War Mage Museum was incredibly intimidating, especially when you only had 16 barricades at the time. However, this is another map I really love once I learned how to barricade it properly. So what we're going to do, starting off, we can block this off in a lane. I like to do it diagonally because we're playing on a crystal defense mission, and I get very scared about the thought of archers just standing here and shooting crystals. I don't think they have enough range to do so, even if you went straight along. But better safe than sorry. So block this off with 2 barricades. Block this off with, I believe that's 7. Come over here, and then you can block this off with 3. Come down here, and then you'll see we now have all the enemies in the side running all the way around this staircase, and then you have the 1 gate in the back coming out these 2 areas. Now, we can actually turn this into 1 full lane by going diagonal with barricades like this. And then what that'll do is all of them will come down here. You've got this 1 kill box you can utilize. They'll come along here, meet up with this gate, and then come down here. And here you'll have your main kill box. So you have a lot of places to place traps if you so wish to do so. And this has a ton of potential. You can use rift barricades to extend this out, buff your traps. You can have barricades come out this way here. If you have more barricades, you can go all the way around, winding down. You can leave it fully open if you want to utilize those elsewhere and just have a ton of ceiling traps, a ton of floor traps, nice wall traps. You can utilize bench traps very well in this map as well. An option you can use these barricades for is, say we go 1, 2, 3. That pushes them all down this way. We can maybe just do 1 here. So you've got a last line of defense. You have Sentinel here to help with this area too. But they shouldn't make it out of the skill box, especially if you have 2 as well to kind of help with the abundance of enemies later on in the waves. But here, it's very easy to defend. So this is the one setup I'm going to show you, because if I were to set this up on the other side, it would just be the same, where I block this section off completely. I write them around here, go all the way around, and out here. That's basically it. There's no difference to how I'd set this up if I were to do it on the other side. You could maybe try and say block this section off, and then do something similar here, where you move this section up this staircase, block that section off completely, and then block this section off here. And then you can have them all come all the way around up here, down here, and then down here. The only issue is you have no ceiling space, and it's a bit too wide to properly utilize this, I think. You can have minecarts down here and whatnot, but apart from that, it's maybe not going to do you a lot of justice compared to the very first setup I showed you here, or even if you want to flip it over on this side. The other alternative is, if you had enough barricades, block this off, have them all come down here and around here. If you had enough barricades, it's possible. It's an option. You definitely get to utilize a lot of ceiling traps, but the first one's still the best option, in my opinion. Back alleys very quickly became one of my favorite maps as soon as I unlocked this, just because there is so many different ways to set up traps on this map. It's also a teleport and rift mission, so there are 3 potential rift spawn points. We're going to start with this rift here, so you get a lot of variety on this one map. What I do is I immediately block this off here, and then what I'll do is I'll run down here, because we're going to want to block off this section as well. I'll then go 1, 2, 3, 4 to block this area off, and then we'll come down here And for now, we'll do this
Not
just to
great
show
with
off
mazes.
one of the potential ways to barricade this map. We'll come back and delete those barricades in a second, however. So that leaves you with 8, and now all enemies are going to come all the way up here, and they're going to come all the way around and up here. You could make them come up here if you want, just to try and utilize these sentinels a bit more. But I feel like this is the weaker of the two staircases. And instead, we have them come all the way up here. Now, the reason that I love doing this is because of the different ways you can use this area here. The first is you could block this section off
This
entirely
is the
and have
perfect
them
place
all
for a
come
barricade.
all the way around here. This lets you utilize the many hazards down in the sewers. So you can have flip traps, you can have push traps, you can have mine carts, etc. They come all the way down here, and again, you can try and throw them into the water. You should be able to use hook shots as well to pull any enemies in. And then, if you have more barricades, you can try and have a little maze here to try and keep them under this little ceiling area, because this is the only ceiling you'll have access to. So you're going to want to try and use this as much as possible, other than this length of fall as well, but you would need to try and push them into this area here. Other than utilizing these hazards, you could also just block this section off like this. That makes all the enemies come down and around, and then you can utilize these sentinels a bit more. Or what you could even do is just put
That's
your
a
barricades
no-go,
down like this. Just try and push them against the wall. As they'll come down here, you can use this area to try and get more caught in the ceiling traps. But you'll be able to use, say, shock zappers or wall blades as they walk across here. The reason I love this staircase is because bomb dispenser is my favorite trap. That's really all it is to it. However, both bomb dispenser and Morningstar launchers are exceptionally good, and you're going to get a lot if you set them down on this staircase. So you just have nothing but bounce traps going all the way down. So anyone coming up is going to trigger these traps. And, you know, what that's going to lead to is these bounce balls going all the way down, hitting all the enemies. Even the enemies slowly coming out of this barricade section are going to just be pelted with the bounce traps and bombs. So again, the major issue with this setup is the very limited ceiling traps you'll have access to, but this is a very fun setup, so it's one I greatly enjoy using. It can just be harder to utilize on higher difficulties and later in the waves, unless you have more barricades, so you can get more use out of the sewer system down here. Now, not too different to what we've set up, there is another setup which I'll show you before showing you a third, which is my favorite for dealing with the rift being up here. And we can just block this off like so. And then we can come down here where we place these barricades. If we just sell these and these, we can come down here, and with just 2 barricades, we'll block this off. So now, the only way enemies can come up are to... Oh, there's a chest there, by the way. Come all the way through here. And again, this is a ton of bounce traps that you can place down and utilize, because you've got stairs, you've got, you know, mine carts you can place down if you want. You can have wall blades along the section here with some bomb dispensers above them.
Is that crooked?
You can have the Morningstar launchers on each side of staircase, or even just along this wall. And with your final barricades, what you can do is you could block the staircase off completely.
Barricade in position. They'll go where we want.
But you're going to want to push them against the wall. So you'd probably want to do something more like this. Probably want to push them more against the wall to go all the way around to get more use out of, you know, shock zappers or the wall blades, etc. And then you'll have the bounce traps going off. You'll have the bomb dispensers going off as well. So this is another really good spot. You do actually have ceilings here and here. So this is arguably better than the first setup I showed you. But it's nice to have options, right? So that is another potential area you've got here. Now, for the third setup, what we're going to do is we're going to come back here. We're going to sell these barricades, and we're going to place some in the same areas as we did before. Doesn't matter where you place them in here. You can push them up forward if you want. You've also got kill boxes here, 2 of them. So you could even try and utilize this space, but it is getting a bit close to the rift. So I'm not too sure about that. But what we can do instead is just remove these barricades. And if we come down here, we can place these barricades here.
Let's send them around.
And we can come over here and we can place these barricades here. So that gives us 1 left, which isn't too good. We can maybe do this. And this gives us a really, really tiny kill box. This gives us a ton of ceiling space down here and here. What I really like to do is
Watch your heads, dummy.
cover this section with the haymakers, especially if you get the 4 times damage thread. And what you can then do is just cover this section in Morningstar launchers. You can still utilize the bomb dispensers here if you want, or especially up here, just to get more use out of the high walls. And then what I like to do is, since we're blocking this area here, we can have the barricade here and then wall blades here and then here, because you might have more barricades that you can place along here to push them against this wall, depending how late you are in your run. Or if you want to use the rift barricade, for instance. And then because it's such a small room, everyone's getting hit by the acid traps as well. Everyone's getting slowed. You can have an ice ballista back here too. You can have shock zappers instead of the haymakers if you want. This is probably a very risky setup, but it's one I've been using on difficulty 10 with tremendous success. It's actually surprising how well this works. This is probably something you want to do with Ren rather than Van, just so we can spam these morning stars when you need to. You've got an emergency trigger if enemies come through, and then everything's just dead instantly. Or at least almost everything. You weaken them tremendously. So I am a huge fan of this setup, even more so than that staircase down there, which used to be my favorite. But instead, using this and having these bounce traps just bounce constantly in this small corridor is a huge help, and also a tremendous amount of fun. So that is 3 setups for if the rift spawns at the top, and we still haven't covered the other 2 rift locations, so this is maybe going to be a slightly longer segment. So what happens if the rift spawns in the sewers? So there's a couple I'm going to show you here.
This is the
We can
perfect
do
place for a
this
barricade.
like this. We can then block off these corners here, and again this one over here. And this rift's nice because it's covered by 2 sentinels, so that gives you just a little bit extra damage if enemies get in close to the rift. Now, very similar to the last rift location, you can block this off and have bounce traps, etc. come all the way down here if you want. And that pushes all enemies down this staircase and then down into this rift. Again, I don't fully recommend this in higher difficulties or in later waves. It is fun. It's very fun. I really enjoy it because then you can, you know, maze them a little down here, for example, push them against the walls as they come all the way around. Obviously push this a bit more forward so the smaller arcs don't leak through. But you do have something like this you can pull off, where you can utilize the wall space a bit more. You can maze around here to push enemies into the ceiling traps, you know, and then you do something like this, just tighten up the barricades a bit more. It's still not efficient, but it is an option. So instead, what you can do, again, similar to one of the previous methods, you can block this off, and then you can utilize the ceiling space here. You can utilize the hook shots. You can utilize the hazards all the way down here. You can even block this section off if you want to make them come all the way down here. You could even, you know, maybe block this section off. Nope, you cannot do that. Because this gate needs to come down here. They can't go all the way around to the back. So you can have a little fun playing around with the sewer system to maze enemies a bit more, and again, utilize the hazards. But I still feel this isn't one of the more efficient methods for setting up the
Maybe
rift.
they'll figure out
So
how to
we
climb
can
over.
block this completely. And we can sell these barricades, and then we can sell these barricades. So what that now does is pushes all enemies down this long corridor. You do have ceiling traps, but you've not got the full use of the ceilings because of the pipes. And you do have more ceiling traps here, so you can maybe try and push them back up with some barricades first, so come all the way around, something like that. You could even sell this so they come all the way through here and push them up a bit more. So that gives you a bit more use of this area. And then you've got this area here as well. You can place some barricades
Barricade in
if you have
position.
enough
They'll go where we
like
want.
this. And then, again, more maybe like this. Depending on how many barricades you have, you can maze them around here. I really like this setup. I really like this setup because you have so much space here. Again, you can get more bounce traps. You can get what's it, the wall scorchers and whatnot. I like it. It's especially a long corridor too, so you can just hang back and snipe enemies. And when you have enough barricades, you can build this out to maze them against the walls and utilize the ceiling traps as well. So those are two of the same kind of setups here, and then one more over here that I'd recommend. You could even try and utilize this area, push them all up, and make them come all the way down here and then all the way down here. If you have
Barricade
enough
in
barricades,
place.
although
This'll stop
you
them.
should be able to do that with the base 22 if you're playing solo. If we do this, yeah, we have more than enough here. If we do this and sell these barricades, we can use this method again, very similar to the first rift, where you have all this section here. You block this off behind you, everyone comes down here, and then you just have a lot of space for walls and not a lot for ceiling because, again, of the pipes. And then you have this little staircase we can have bounce trap going down. And then you can even utilize this hazard here if you're going with hook shots, with flip traps, etc. So, again, quite a few options to use. If you're tired of using the same option over and over, you have your options. Now, what about the last rift location? What if it spawns up here? Well, what I like to do is
This
3
is now a
barricades,
dead
block this
end.
staircase off. 4 barricades, block this staircase off. 3 barricades, block this staircase off. Instead of blocking off the staircase, you can, again, write them all the way around the sewers. If you were to, say, block this and block upstairs, you could maybe get them to go all the way around like so. That might require a bit more barricades than necessary, so I think it's easier to just make them come all the way around here. Then, what you'll do, I'm getting ahead of myself, come up these staircases. Rather than blocking these off here with 4 barricades, you just need to come up here,
That's a no-go,
and that's 2.
orc dorks.
So this is the first method I really like to use. What I then do is then block this section off. So all the enemies are going to come up here. And they're going to come down here. And then you can place more barricades like this to push them against the walls. You have a ton of ceiling traps. When they start coming out here, you can start pushing them this way.
You're not great
And,
with
you know,
mazes.
create a little maze system. If you have more barricades, you can go all the way across here and all the way around. I really like this. I really like this because you have these staircases here. And you can have, again, your bomb dispensers, your Morning Stars. They will likely fall in the water here, however, if not enough enemies are there to catch them. And you can have your mine carts go down as well. So you can have fun with the physics traps and the bounce traps. And then what you can do is you can leave this
Barricading them
open,
here.
or you can block
They
this
won't
with
get
4.
past this.
If you do block this, they're not going to struggle to get to your F. They're just going to come all the way around here and go all the way down through the sewers. So it'll just take them a while. Or you can leave this open and do this. You can place bounce traps up here to come all the way down the stairs. You could, if you wanted, even block this off. And I believe they'll do something similar. They'll go all the way through the sewers, all the way around, and then all the way down this staircase. So you have that option as well. There's definitely a number of ways to play about with this room. I really like this setup. I think it's a ton of fun. But there is another one we can do.
They'll go
And if
right
we
where I
block
want 'em to.
this off with 4 barricades, come back up here, and sell these two, already you've got a little kill box here, similar to the one over there, which is really nice because I really like these very small corridors, these 2 floor space white corridors filled with ceiling traps and wall traps. Or if we come over here, we can put barricades here. Nope, don't do that. What you can do is you can put barricades, I believe it's here.
They'll have to take
Just
the
2
long
barricades
way.
there. And then you can place 4 barricades here. So all the enemies will again go through the sewers, and a bit of the reverse of what we just did. They'll come all the way up this way instead, meet this gate, and they'll come down here. And again, another section of a very thin corridor filled with ceiling traps, filled with wall traps, filled with floor traps. So you have a couple really nice options. If they come out, that's fine. They come back here, you have an emergency second kill box, which is a little shorter, I believe, but still very, very effective. If you just want to spam it with Morningstar balls and bomb dispensers and haymakers, you can do that. And it works surprisingly well. Again, I really like this big room down here, especially because you can utilize the stairs a bit more, in my opinion. Obviously, you can utilize those stairs too, but it won't affect that gate. And then if you just have this covered with the bounce traps and the haymakers and whatnot, when it triggers, not a lot's coming out here live. Especially if you have 2 very similar kill boxes set up here and here. So this is just another option. Those are the 2 options I have for the rift spawning down here. Again, you can try and play around with the sewer. You can maybe make them come all the way up here. You can maybe make them come all the way up this staircase as well if you wanted. That is another possibility. If you were to like block this off instead, you could use the staircase on the setup. In fact, you can use the staircase on every rift location. So bit of a longer setup video just because of the amount of ways you can play around with this map, but that hopefully gives you a number of options to approach it. You can try each one if you want. You can pick your favorite if you're getting bored with one. Again, I've given quite a lot just in this one map, so hopefully that helps, and hopefully if you're still maybe struggling with Ghost Fang, this allows you to beat them rather easily. Royal Colosseum is a map I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with because it is fun, but it feels like there's only one consistent way to deal with this map. And to do that, we're immediately starting with creating these barricades in a diagonal fashion until we meet the center of this rift. Then we're just going to reflect this pattern on the other side like this. So what this does is this pushes all the orcs out this gate all the way around here. You've got sentinels that will start chipping away at both gates, which is nice. And then all the way through here. You got this room, which you can utilize the hazards on if you wish. You know, you can get hook shots, you can get flip traps, that's fine. And then they come all the way down here, and this is basically it. This is it. You've got a gate here, all the enemies meet here. You're going to want to go 1, 2, 3 like this. Got a sentinel up there, which can help. And then this is the setup. So this is Royal Colosseum. I do feel like it's it's a bit of a one-trick pony of a map because this is probably the most efficient way to utilize the map. But it can be fun. It can be difficult. You probably here on this video for this because Thudd can be really annoying to deal with. And this is what I did to deal with Thudd. At the time, I usually have double wide. It's very frequent, especially with the reroll mechanic now, to be able to get it. So you can then use those barricades to extend this out a bit. Otherwise, you do have rift barricades, which I'll just use to help fill in the gaps. So you can do something like this to push the enemies in here and push them around like this if you want, like that. And then, if you have enough barricades, what I like to do is push them out a bit more like this, all the way down here. I don't actually have enough money to do this with the rift barricades, so instead we'll do something like this, just to show off how I set this up. So we want to push this out just a little more for the big guys. But if we do this, they come all the way through here, across this wall, so you can have, you know, traps that are 2 walls wide, like your wall scorches and whatnot to affect them here. You've got some ceilings as well. You could even just have ballistas here if you want ice ballistas, for example. And once they make it here, you can just push the barricades out like this. So they come all the way through here, they come down, they come around, etc. You could even do something like this if you want, to push them all the way through and around. You have options. In fact, that might not work this way around. You would have to just do it straight up. But then they'll come around to your rift here. This is the only thing I've tried with Rift Colosseum. So granted, there might be additional options with dealing this with this map. But in my opinion, it's the best option. That is just my opinion. I could be wrong. What you could even do is just leave this completely open if you want. Or you could just have barricades come down here to split it up like that. But this is it. This is the one setup. The only other thing I can think of is instead of setting the barricades up here, start from, say, here and go diagonally to kind of block off all these gates. So these gates have to come all the way around and into this bath area. And then you could maybe block off sections like this, or, you know, you could block off sections like here to make this gate go all the way around here. You've got some ceilings here, ceilings here. So you do have this section as well that you can try and write enemies into. You might need double wide to be able to pull this off. But this does give you hazards. This does give you wall traps. This does give you ceilings. So, you know, if you did have them come around here, you can do something like this, for example. You want to come all the way around, hug these walls. Same with down here. You can have them hug these walls as they come around. If you block this section and that section off there, you have a lot of ceiling traps, even the higher ceilings, that'll help you out too. And then they'd just head straight to the rift from here if you did that. Like I said, the barricades would instead come out from, say, this section, and then meet up on the other side. So you need to move them around, and then once they head here or even halfway through, you can start building them back down to block off this section here. So something similar to that. But those are the two methods, the only two methods, I believe. And even then, the first method is probably the strongest and most efficient. This one, I feel like there's more room for error if you set up this way. But it does let you utilize the hazards more. So there's that, and that's always fun. So that's worth trying out there. I've been Robin Vuz, and I really appreciate you watching this video. I hope these setups end up being useful to you, and if you've been struggling with the game, I hope this can change that. Again, if these didn't help you or you have any recommendations to improve the setups, let me know in the comment section below. I aim to post much more Orcs Must Die Deathtrap content in the future, so be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this guide and are looking for more videos. You can also follow me both here and on Twitch for future Orcs Must Die streams. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and best of luck beating all the bosses and sailing through to Mission 10 and beyond.